Good day and greetings from the Great White North. My name is Prickly Poo and welcome to day 83 of a year of change. Today being Friday, once again, it is time for a TV show, or a documentary, or something like that, but this one is actually going to be a TV show. Over the past few weeks, aside from the wheat one that I showed you a couple of weeks ago, I've noticed that a lot of the documentaries are really emotionally draining. They're usually just showing someone who's at their absolute breaking point or sort of on their last legs that you need to make this change or you're going to die. And unfortunately, they have. The Half-Ton World, there was one of the people in there last week that had already died. The title of one of them was The Man Who Ate Himself to Death, so you pretty much knew how that was going to end. But I wanted to sort of turn things around this weekend and give you guys something that's a little bit more upbeat, a little more positive. So this is a TV show that I think after you're done, some of you are probably going to want to continue watching it. The one I've actually selected to go into the recommended viewing playlist is from season 6. At that stage, they found their pacing. They have a good format, and I mean, you can go back and find right from day one. It hasn't changed a whole lot. But I thought that this one was a really good one just to sort of start out with. Plus, the video quality is very good, so that's always helpful. But it's a show called Supersize versus Superskinny. And part of the reason why I enjoy this show is that it doesn't really focus on just the obese people. Basically what happens, and actually part of the other reason is because of the presenter. The presenter is someone I've mentioned before. He has a show called Embarrassing Bodies. He's been on different panels and things like that. And his name is Dr. Christian Jessen. And he's a doctor from the UK. And part of the reason why I like him is that he's got a lot of really practical advice. He understands that it's not easy losing weight or eating healthy. But he does say, however you can make those changes to better yourself, then do it. I've heard him tell people, they were saying, like, I can't eat fruit and vegetables. It's just, there's nothing I can do. And they made a joke about eating raisin cookies. And he said, that counts. If that's the only way you're ever going to do it, I would rather you have that instead of, a chocolate chip cookie. At least it's better. And it was sort of that outlook as well. I mean, it's not the greatest, but he understands you need to start very, very small. Make those tiny changes. And over time, over a year, then those raisin cookies will turn into, something else, like raisin crackers or just plain raisins. He understands that eventually you will make those changes and it will be better. But something is better than nothing. People have said, oh, well, you need to have this amount of fluid and you need to get it from this and this source. He says, it doesn't matter. If you can get fluids into you, if you need them, then if it's water or juice or chocolate milk, it's still better than nothing. You can make the changes later on as you go. And that's sort of been the outlook that I've tried to give for this channel as well, that we will be eventually making the changes that we need. But right now, the exercise that we're doing, it's not a lot. You're moving for half an hour, twice a week, but it's better than nothing. It's better than what we were doing before. And watching our calories, it's still better than what we were doing before. Even going as far back as the dates, that if you're replacing cookies with that, there's still a tremendous amount of sugar in it. And the calories, you may not be cutting down your calories at all. But it's better than having just empty calories, like from Twinkies or chips or something like that. There is that trade-off. And right now, we're looking at mainly caloric intake, just numbers. So, we have those small steps and we will eventually get them. Another reason why I like him is that number one, he's an actual doctor. His advice is very good. It's very practical and it's something that can be applied by everyone. But there isn't that same melodrama that seems to go in with a lot of the stateside doctors. And I use the term doctors loosely when I look at someone like Dr. Oz, who is a complete nut job and should not have the position he holds, not just on TV, but in the medical community at all. Any doctor who, touts faith healing and homeopathy should not be someone that you should look up to, in my humble opinion. That's just one example. There are a ton of them out there that do the same thing, that you look at and you just think it's bad advice or it's just fucking quackery. I probably could have found something better than quackery. I just said fuck. So it's bullshit. Horseshit. Some other animal shit. So there isn't that melodrama that sort of goes along with that. Same thing with the show. There isn't, dramatic music saying Billy's dying this week. He does sort of, in a lot of these, he will show each person what they eat over a course of a week by just basically showing them a pile of food. And it's mainly to sort of show them, give them a bit of a shock to the system and saying, this is enough for 2 or 3 people. This is how much you're eating in the run of a week. So there is that aspect to it. But the other reason why I like this is that, like I was saying earlier, they don't just focus on the obese people. The premise of the show is that they will take a very, very fat person and a very, very thin person. And they each have equal time. And it's not a matter of you need to lose weight and this is what you should look like. He'll take each person and he'll say, you're eating far too much, obviously. You are eating far too little. And his main focus, again, the same sort of reason why I decided to do it this way with the channel, is for healthy eating. He wants that thin person to gain some weight so that they're up to a healthy weight. He wants the fat person to lose it so that they're at the healthy weight. It's not saying, well, you need to watch how she eats because this is how you're going to get thinner, or you need to watch how he eats. It's really focusing more on, like I say, they each have equal time. So he'll go to the obese person and he'll focus on heart disease, or in this particular case, stroke, because the person had a lot of salt in their diet. I know. I'm getting to that. Don't worry. The original documentary for this week was going to be a salt one, but we'll postpone that for a bit. So he just sort of showed him this is the damage that it can do because of how much you're eating. And for the person who's underweight, he'll go to them and say, these are the issues that you're going to end up having. And you need to get up to a proper weight. He shows them the medical issues that they have, and in this case, personal issues, because she was sort of leaning on her kids and saying, well, I don't have time because I have these kids. But she does spend a lot of time with her kids, and he said, if you want to keep doing that, because you're malnourished, you need to start eating more. You need to start eating better, because she was living off of like toasted sandwiches. So he gives them both equal time. This one is sort of focusing a little bit more on the fat person because they were still very young and he was consistently gaining. So they do sort of focus on that one in the show. But when you go and watch different episodes, they will focus on each person. Sometimes it'll be more towards the fat person. Sometimes it's more towards the thin person. And his goal is really to get them to a stage where they're healthy. And you can see he genuinely does want to help them. And again, it's very practical advice. And it shows their progress and things like that. And essentially what they do, they'll go into his house, basically, when they set them up. And for a few days, in this one I think it's only 2, but they've done up to 2 a week before, they force them to switch their diets. So the thin person, for example, they would say, okay, well, for breakfast, this is what I would normally have. Then the fat person cooks their breakfast. And then they say, this is really what I would normally have for breakfast. And then they switch. And they do this for a few days. And in one aspect, of course, the fat person is always hungry. And the thin person is sort of overstuffing themselves. But it just sort of shows them, even just in that short amount of time, the changes that they can make. And I think it's a positive show when you go into it. And again, the doctor that's presenting it really seems to want to help these people and do it in a way that's realistic. Not by saying to someone, okay, you need to cut out your sugar, your salt, you need to cut your calories down to 1,000 a day. It's just ridiculous. It's, he understands that there are certain things that go on during the run of a day that you may not get to eat at a certain time. That maybe the only thing that's left for you at the end of the day is something quick because you're exhausted. But he'll offer some advice to say, here's what you need to do to try to make that better. Here are some alternatives, things like that. So it is a good show to watch, and I think it's one that, I continue to watch it, and I hope that you will as well, because at the end of each show, when they go through everything, it is a positive thing at the end. Now, there are a couple of things I will sort of not really warn you about, but tell you about in advance. This week I kind of it wasn't purposeful, but sort of taking aim at Texas. They passed a gun concealment law that you're allowed to carry them on campuses. They're cutting out a lot of birth control support and everything else. So I sort of been yelling at that, and it was just coincidence that this show, they sort of focus on Texas again. There's a town in Texas that now is in the records as being the most obese town in America. So this series, the 6th season, they decided to go to that town and sort of find out what's going on there and how they can help people and stuff like that. So it's just purely coincidental. I have nothing really personally against Texas. I've never been there. Sarah Q is from Texas, so there's someone there. But it was just sort of a coincidence, but I just don't want you to think that I'm picking on Texas just for this week. The other thing is you're going to hear them refer to weight in stone a lot. It's not that bad. You'll hear someone say, oh, well, they're 5 stone, or they're 10 stone, or 15 stone. A stone is just 14 pounds. Sure, some of you already know that. Sure, some of you are going to go and look it up just because you're going to not quite understand. But when your currency is pound and your weight is pounds, I mean, they still can measure things in pounds, and they sort of understand because they aren't morons. They understand that a word can have several meanings. But it just seems to be more common that when they're talking about their weight, they'll say, oh, well, they weigh 10 stone, which is 140 pounds. So just keep that in mind. You can do some quick math as you're watching the show. But it's nice because when they come back and they say, well, you've gained this much or you've lost this much, they'll usually refer to it in stone. So you get to do quick math in your head, and then you figure it out. You go, oh, that's good, maybe, or not. I don't know. But it is a really good show. I think that it's something that's a little more positive than what I've been showing in the past few weeks. And there are some moments that are going to make you cry. There are some moments that are going to make you smile. And I think it has a really good balance of that. But it does sort of usually end on a very positive note where, at the very least, the people that are involved in it, the 2 people, they understand what changes they need to make, and in general, they feel better. They're very grateful for what he's done, and he, as I say, he genuinely does want to get people back into a healthy lifestyle, whether it's them eating more or eating less. Just eating properly, I think, is what the main focus is. So give it a look. I think you'll probably enjoy it, and a lot of you are going to continue on watching it. You don't have to continue from season 6. You can go back and find it somewhere on YouTube or online somewhere, where you can go and start at season 1 and work your way through there. But I think it's just something that I wanted to get away from the really emotionally draining, heavy topics. Showing, oh, we're going to die because we're fat. And next week, we're going to die because we're fat. And then the week after that, we're going to die because we're fat. So these were originally just sort of documentaries or TV shows in this case, that I thought were really good, that sort of struck a chord one way or the other. I just noticed a trend, and I wanted to sort of break that off. Next week, I've already got next week's planned. It's going to tie into something that I'm going to do on Wednesday. I will warn you ahead of time, next week is not for the squeamish, so get ready for that. Again, you don't have to watch it next week, but it's really interesting, and I think that you'll like it. And then Wednesday, I'm going to do something related to that, and that's probably not for the squeamish either. But it's something I've never done, something I've been meaning to do for a while. Anyway, I'm jumping ahead. I'm sorry. So give the show a quick look. I think that you'll really enjoy it. I certainly do. And if you want, Christian Jensen, I always call him Jensen. Christian Jessen has another show called Embarrassing Bodies, which is very interesting. It's more of a, he does still work in a clinic. So these people will come in and, he gives them advice and things like that. It's not always related to weight. It's just mainly odd, like medical things, medical oddities, I guess. But I find that the help that he gives and the advice that he offers or the advice he gives and the help he offers, either one, it's very good. It's geared more towards what I'm trying to do with this, in that, it's realistic. It's very practical. It's something that people can do. And he'll admit it's going to be difficult sometimes to do it, but it's something that you can do. It's not going to be impossible. You're not going to be jumping through hoops. You're not going to be, trying to cut out everything all at once and then run 5 miles a day. Something is better than nothing. And if it's better than what we're doing now, then terrific. That's the main thing that we need to do. But anyway, that's it for this video. So thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, please poke the like button for me. And in the meantime, keep yourself warm and fuzzy, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.